Street Smart podcast here with Nicole Gauthier. Was that correct?
Gauthier.
Gauthier. I knew I was going to get it wrong. Of Wicked Holdings. So thank you, Nicole, for joining us here at the studio, and look forward to getting to know you. So it's I met you at an event, a pretty unique event, and was just really happy to get to sit down and learn more about your story.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Justin. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a really cool studio. Glad to, be invited to join in on a conversation with you.
Perfect. So again, like we were talking about just a moment ago, this really is just a discussion about, who you are more than anything. So let's start there. Where are you from?
Yeah. So I guess I'm from a couple of different places,
Okay.
I'll put. But my family originally is from Louisiana, so
Okay.
Lafayette, Louisiana. Born there, and then about 5-6 years old was when I moved up to Canada. So that's kind of why I say two different.
Big change.
Yes, exactly. That's kind of why I say like two different places, because Louisiana has a very rich culture and
Man.
history and background to it. And but then growing up in Canada, that's a very different environment, and both culturally as
Sure.
well as just physically, right?
What part of Canada?
From Calgary, Alberta. Yeah.
So maybe you can help me with something. So I used to
Sure.
work for a company that was out of Calgary. What determines whether you pronounce it Calgary or Calgary?
Oh, that's a good question. Calgary.
Because I had people
don't
in the
know.
company that would pronounce it. Some would pronounce it one way and some the other.
Yeah.
And I always thought, well, you guys are from here, so what's the deal?
Yeah. No. You know what? I'm not even sure. Maybe it's maybe someone that is from a different part of Canada
Maybe.
says Calgary.
That's disappointing. I hope that you could help me with that.
That's
So
a
you-
very unique question.
It's a question I've had for a long time, and I was hopeful that you would get it closed out today, but nope. So 6 years old, you moved from Louisiana
Yes.
to Alberta.
Calgary,
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 Canada.
Alberta.
Yeah.
hmm
How was that?
We moved actually during one of the worst snowstorms in history.
Of course.
Apparently, that first winter there, and
Well, luckily, people from Louisiana are adapted to snow conditions.
we're
right
so
off.
used to that,
Yeah.
right? We're used to minus 45
Sure.
and wind chills, and yeah, we moved with snow boots and snow pants. I mean,
No
who doesn't
problem at
have
all.
that, right?
Everyone has that.
Yeah, no, it was a very interesting change, right? And, also being in Canada, we didn't have any other family. So it was just my mom, my dad, my brother, and I, and all of our family was back home. So it was a lifestyle change, environment change, cultural, and there was a lot going on, but
and as close as it is, you're not in the United States. You're
Right.
out of the country then too.
exactly. So now
What precipitated the move? Your dad take a job or?
Yeah. So
Okay.
my dad has a mechanical engineering background.
Okay.
And we actually moved up to Canada because he got an opportunity to start a chemistry lab. And so he did some consulting for a company called Biochem Consulting out there for about 10 years. And he ran a lab. So that's the brilliant move, the decision behind moving, and never
Hey.
looked back.
It's probably great though.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, you very fond memories of your time in Canada.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. We lived out. I mean, I grew up my whole life there up
Sure,
until
pretty much.
Yeah, up until we ended up moving back down to the States in my kind of early 20s.
Okay.
Husband moved us, also in oil and gas, right? So
Right.
oil and gas has been, definitely a fond piece of me in a sense.
Well, I always tell people there are a couple ways to advance in oil and gas, but the easiest and quickest way is to be willing to relocate.
Yeah.
Because if a company finds someone that's, one, they can do the work, two, they don't mind bouncing around a little bit, you'll do well.
Right.
And if you're not willing to, you'll do well until times get lean, and then you'll have to find something else to do for a little bit. So
Yeah.
So you met your husband. Is he from Canada originally?
He is, yeah. So
And his name's Justin, which is probably the best name there is, frankly.
I meet a lot of Justins apparently, and just
Does
took
he get
one
called
favorite
Jason a lot?
one. When he was younger, he would get called that. I haven't heard that so much anymore.
I get called Jason a lot, and I've asked Jasons. This is another weird question, probably. I've asked Jasons if they get called Justin. And
Yeah.
They don't.
Really? So it's just a Justin thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that is. So you met your husband. Did you meet him in school, or did you meet him? How'd you meet him?
So I met him at a New Year's Eve party.
Nice.
And a couple of my girlfriends had two guys that they were, interested in and seeing. And just so happened that they wanted to go to a party one night. And gosh, I would have been 16 at this point, 16, 17 years old. And went out to this party and just, kind of connected with a couple of people there. My friends totally ditched me while we were there, of course, right? What do you do when you're a teenager? You're
classic
like,
move.
oh, yeah, total classic move, right?
Yeah.
So
Classic teenager.
Yeah, so I'm stuck with this guy, Justin, ended up marrying him later on, but
He's stuck.
Yes.
He's going to enjoy hearing that.
Oh, he knows.
Right. Oh, he knows this story?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But yeah, totally stuck with this guy. And I'm like, okay, like we're the only two that are single there. There's not very many other people at this time, right? And we ended up honestly, we talked for hours. It was like, I want to say we looked up, and before you knew it, there was a full-blown party happening around us, and we hadn't even noticed. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great connection.
Yeah, for sure.
So you guys met as teenagers, you're still together, you have kids, married, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Moved to the States. That's awesome. So when did you guys move back to the States?
So we moved back to the States. He moved actually before I did. So he was back in the States around 2010. Okay. And then I came in 2011.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so what are you doing at this point? You hadn't started a business yet.
No.
Where are you working? Or what are you doing? Are you going to school? Are you working?
Yeah.
And what's going on?
So at the time, actually we bounced around a little bit in the States. So back in Canada, in that kind of 2009, 2010, working for Canadian Natural Resources, so up north, and as an accountant, kind of doing my thing, right, crunching numbers. And Justin's working for he's working for CES at the time, so still the same company that he's at today, just the Canadian division. And we're building a house, planning our wedding, doing all this, fun stuff,
in Canada.
Right? Yeah, in Canada. We ended up getting married in the States, in Louisiana. So took him back home to my roots. But we're planning all these different things, right? Lots of different movement in terms of our lives. And he tells me one day, as we have a house being built, I'm moving to Pennsylvania. And I'm like, wait, what? Like
that is the most oil field story.
Yes, yeah.
Like, oh, hey, listen, the house and stuff, that's great. We're not going to be there.
Yeah, no, not at all. So here we are.
Right.
Building a house.
Pennsylvania,
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh's beautiful, actually.
It probably is now.
Was it then?
At the time, this is what, 10, 12 years ago, right? So it was very industrial. Mm-hmm. And I think if someone like really respects that type of architecture and they like that kind of that feel, then yeah, it's a super cool place to be. But for us, we're used to like the mountains,
sure.
Freshwater lakes, like outdoor type, more modernized
Banff's not that far from Calgary. It's beautiful.
Yeah, 3 hours away, right?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought the first time I ever went to Pittsburgh, just when you come out of that Fort Pitt tunnel and the downtowns right there, that was always very cool. It was a cool presentation to me. I was like, oh, that's neat.
Yeah, yeah.
So you moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. How long are you there?
He does. He does.
Did you ever go there?
No, I didn't. So
strong move.
Yeah. So it was one of those where we're like, I'm an accountant, right? I'm very conservative thinking, like, how long are you going to be there? I want like all the details laid out.
You need some numbers.
Yeah. And the reality is in the oil field, you really just don't have that, right? It's just, I don't know. I'm not sure. So I kind of got used to that. I stuck back. So finished building the house, finished planning the wedding, doing all that stuff. And we're living, in two different countries, I guess, at this point. And, he moves up there. Good thing I didn't, because he was only up there for 8 months.
Oh, wow.
And then he got moved somewhere else. So that's kind of how we ended up in Texas. So we went from Pennsylvania. We shipped all of our wedding gifts, everything up there, and then we got notice. Oh yeah, no, he's actually going to Texas. Yeah.
So where in Texas did he go?
So he had a short stint out in Fort Worth. He went out there for mud school.
Okay.
So he was there for about a couple of months, I want to say, living out of a hotel with a whole bunch of other rig hands and
sure.
Right. So kind of learning that side of things. And I'm still in Calgary. So wrapping up the house, and then I want to say a few months went by, and then I joined him in Texas. Yeah.
In Fort Worth?
Houston.
In Houston.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at this point, he's done. He is back at the office, kind of at AES, and at that same time, he's kind of getting acclimated to the new office environment, I guess you could say. And then he went and worked rigs. So he was a mud engineer for, I want to say a few years. Yeah, definitely a few years. And I'm living in a new country, new state, know no one.
Sure.
We've got a house. I'm scared of the highways because I'm like, who drives on, one lane highways that's like 13 lanes across? Not used to that.
Well, we do. That's
yeah. Texans do, right? And they
That's
drive
right.
very fast.
Yeah.
So
The speed limit's a suggestion, really, more than anything.
yeah,
It's just kind of a channel marker. It's not really it's not
No
a
one
law
follows it.
for sure.
right.
There are times that I've passed the police officers and thought, I wonder how fast I have to be going before they'll actually do something here. This is
Right.
ridiculous. Like, for sure I should have gotten pulled over for that. But yeah, so I'm noticing a theme here. He's working. This is very oil field too. He's working and you're,
I'm bouncing around.
You're bouncing around, kind of, sort of following him, but you're also working too, right? So when you came to the States, did you transfer with the company that you were with? Did they have a position for you in the States at all, or did you have to find a new gig?
Yeah, no, I had to find a new gig because they were purely a Canadian company.
Right.
Came down to the States, and yeah, I think for one, I was learning the new area, right? We were kind of told like, yeah, you should move out to Katy. It's close to, it's got good school districts. Mind you, we don't have kids at this point, right? So,
But you're gonna.
at some point, right? But close to his office and, all that fun stuff. And then, but he was working rigs. So, at that point, it really didn't
You could
matter.
live
It's
wherever,
just kind of,
really, yeah.
yeah. So I think I had about 4 or 5 months off before I kind of started to say, okay, like, let me look for something and kind of see what my next move's going to be. And that took me on my next stint to working for a company called Quantum Resources.
Okay.
So
Still in
oil and
accounting,
gas.
finance, that's your background.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my background. So
You went to school for that.
I went to school for finance.
Okay.
And then I ended up doing accounting work. So, yeah, it was kind of looking back on it. I had this choice to either go the safe route and go for work for a large company and, as in an accounting role, which is always considered quite safe, right? Or the other option was for me to work for a company called, I think it was Olympia Trust. And it would have been as a currency trader, which didn't know anything about trading currency. It was going to be very sales based in terms of lots of cold calling and lots of kind of, looking at screens, and just everything was very, very new. And it was a little bit more risky because it was a very small base salary, but mostly commission. And, coming out of school and, you're wanting to be out on your own, you're going to choose, more of that safe route. So, I ended up, choosing the accounting role, and kind of that was basically all of my work experience in the corporate world.
It's interesting that, when you listen to you tell that part of it and you talk about that in a way where you're risk averse, right? And then you decide it, and we'll get to this at some point. You decide at some point, I'm just going to start my own thing. And that's a very risky thing.
Right.
So I'm interested to hear kind of how you bridge to that gap from, because when I was younger, I would have been more prone to take the riskier thing, thinking, well, if this craps out, I have years to recover from it.
Right.
And you didn't. You jumped to the safe thing immediately, and then later said, "Man, let's figure this. Let's do something risky." So I'm interested to hear how you sort of bridge that gap, because that'd be interesting to know.
Yeah.
But what did you want to be when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a stockbroker.
At what age did you decide you wanted to be a stockbroker? And if you say 6, that'd be amazing.
No, I was a teenager at this point, I think. So I started investing when I was 12 or 13, I want to say. Started to get into the market, doing mutual funds and that sort of thing. And then, so it must have been probably around that time, maybe 14. I know for sure it was before college. So I still would have been in high school and had these thoughts of becoming a broker. And
is that something you'd watched your parents do, and that's what got you interested in it, or was it just you had some interest in it? How did that
investing?
How did that how did investing, especially stock investments,
Mm-hmm.
how did you become interested in that at 12, 13, 14 years old?
So I started a business when I was 11. And
Well, that is not on your LinkedIn profile. What in the world?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. Although it was very profitable business, and probably one that I worked in the longest. I had started babysitting at the age of 11. So I've always been a very independent child. Like this is what my mom says all the time. Like, you never wanted help. You always wanted to do everything yourself. Even if you dropped your cake, at your birthday party or whatever, like you always wanted to just go off and do your own thing. And I remember that, like, reflecting back when I was a kid, like seeing different things that I had done as like very entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that's kind of what projected me to being kind of where I'm at right now, through reflecting, of course, right?
Sure.
But yeah, so I wanted to be independent. I wanted to have my own money, be able to just kind of do my own shopping, and in Canada, so the age limits are a little different. So you can start driving earlier. You can get your learner's permit at 14, and you can actually get your babysitting license at 11. So not sure I would have trust 11-year-olds right now with my kids.
It's interesting that you guys have to have a license to babysit.
Yeah, well, I don't know that you did, but I did. I got my babysitting.
It's not a
permit
bad
and stuff.
idea. I mean, you are tending to someone's most prized
Valuable
thing,
possessions, right? Yeah. So here I am, 11. I go to my mom brings me to my babysitting course. I think it was like a weekend thing, or maybe like a couple of weeks type thing. But I go off. You get CPR certified, and all that stuff, right? And then I go off and I start, my mom helps me make flyers. So I go around door to door and I'm dropping off flyers and knocking on doors saying like, yeah, I offer babysitting as a service. And I ended up just gaining so much business that way.
That's awesome.
So lots of door to door stuff. I think I may have even put out an ad somewhere, but it was a hustle, right? You're going door to door. And I just built my book of business, and I babysat from 11 on to, I think I was actually up until we moved to the States. So about 22, 23.
Oh, wow.
I had a few families left that I had nanny for.
I was going to ask, what point does it change from babysitting to now you're a nanny? Like there's got to be a changeover. Like,
yeah, so I would do nannying for some families like throughout the summer, where maybe one of the mom or dad worked from home and they just had a lot of kids, and could afford to have a nanny come and be there from morning, like 8 a.m. till 5 p.m.
That's right.
So all day kind of thing, and I loved kids, so like that didn't feel like work to me. That was like, I'm just having fun and I'm enjoying my
I'm getting
time.
to come play with other people's kids.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I was very artsy. So I remember I would always bring some sort of bag with candies. I would do like a little treat bag for them. But then I also had some sort of project that we could work on. So would do that. And word got around that, I was doing all of this babysitting and this nannying, and my business just really like took off. And I think once my parents saw how much money I always had as a kid, like I would, make $40 here, $100 here. And
all
all cash. Yeah. And I wasn't spending any of it really, because, I'm a kid. I need to actually like get driven to go do my shopping or ride my bike or whatever, right? So that's when my parents had seen, okay, like she's got, over $1,000 just sitting around, like we got to do something.
Which to a kid is $1 million.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
so
it's a
much
lot.
money.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so my mom took me to Edward Jones. We opened up a investment account, and then that's when we started doing mutual funds. And then I think I would just do weekly deposits or every other week, a couple $100 here, $300 there, and it just started to grow. And so that's kind of what intrigued me about the market. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, my intro.
And so then when it came time to get into the workforce, you decided to go to work for somebody else.
Yeah, I did.
That's kind of
Shocking,
funny.
right?
That's kind of funny. So you come to the States, you get a job back working in accounting and finance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your safety net type of thing, probably, right? Like
Yes.
I know I can make money doing this.
Right.
And how long did you do that before, you decided, man, there's something else out there for me?
Yeah. So the company that I worked for had a very different work-life environment. I'll say I didn't have much of it. And the corporate
much of
culture,
the life side.
Right. Much
Yeah.
of the life side. And then the corporate, like the culture just really wasn't what I was looking for. I found that like my mental health kind of being there really just was not in like a good place. And I was stressed, and Justin was like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, you don't even have to work. You're just working because like, this is what you're used to. And I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I really don't need to, be in this role right now. But I'm a person that's always just been that, how do you put it? Just needed to be like my own self driver, right? Like in terms of independence, I don't like to rely on other people for things. So even though I didn't like necessarily need the job for the income, like I needed it for myself because I just wasn't used to just being at home, right? I'm
Sure.
at home and we don't even have kids at this point. So most women probably would be kind of happy to be in that situation, at
Yeah.
least the ones that I know.
I don't know. My
few of them.
wife we've been very fortunate. And she's, raising kids for a while now. And I mean, I have a 20-year-old daughter and a 16, almost 17-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And she hasn't worked for a while. And every year I think I want to go back to work.
Yeah.
And I was like, give it a couple more years and get Kendall out of high school and then do what you want. Because
Right.
there's a lot of value in my mind in being able to be present.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that's important, and to be able to, and not everybody can do that. So to be in a position where we can do that, I think we should take advantage of it. So,
oh, for sure. Yeah. And
But-
so that was my kind of my next thing, right? Is from that point, I worked for this company for I gave it a year. So I told myself I hit that year mark, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. At the same time that I was working, I was going to night school. So I actually, I went to University of Houston and got the rest of my 4-year degree, and just thought I would go back into the corporate world.
And you get your degree in finance.
In finance,
Yeah.
yeah. So Canada works a little bit differently, where they have like 2-year degrees and they have 4-year degrees. The 2-year degrees are not considered associate degrees. They're like in between an associate and an undergrad. So I didn't have very much longer for me to go ahead and just get my 4-year degree
Just
out
go
of
ahead
the way.
and finish it up, yeah.
Right, finish it up, because I was already more than halfway there. So just thought, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to use it to my advantage, where now I've just got more options available to me to get back into the oil and gas world. And, now that I've got this piece of paper, right?
So even then, you're going to school not thinking, I'm going to turn this into a business.
Right.
I'm going to use this to leverage a better position back in oil and gas.
Right. Exactly. So
Not a bad plan.
yeah, no, not at all. But then we have, we plan for children, and I graduate with a 3-month-old. So, so at that point, it was very much like, okay, we made the decision that, I would just be a stay-at-home mom and do that. And, I technically, I guess I still kind of am, because our kids are very little still. I don't regret making that decision at all, but I still needed something for me. So that's kind of, what took me to the next stage of my life.
Right. And that's great. And so I'm interested, like I said, to hear what helped you bridge the gap from risk averse to, I think I'm going to start a business in real estate.
Right.
And I think I know some of what you're going to say, but I'm interested to hear from you, like, when you start having the idea of what you want to do with Wicked Holdings,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, how do you get to the name Wicked Holdings? That's a cool name. But beyond that, how do you start saying and forming a plan for, like, okay, how I want to do this, because it's very specific what you do. I've
Right.
looked at, I listened to one of the podcasts that you were on, and the way that you're doing it isn't just real estate. It's real estate there's a real purpose behind it.
Mm-hmm.
How did you identify that mission, and then understanding the risk involved, get your head wrapped around, I'm still doing this?
Right. Yeah. So I developed my mission when I decided that I was going to get into real estate. It wasn't until, let me back up. So during COVID, obviously we have a lot of time to sit around and reflect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I didn't want to go back to the corporate world, because now we've got kids, we've got 2 children, and I wanted to still be very present for them. I volunteer at their schools. I'm very active. I, pick them up and drop them off at school. Justin helps for sure when he can, but I'm very present, and I didn't want to give that up. So that's why already I had scratched out like going back to the corporate world, because my family in that time meant more to me. So as I'm reflecting, okay, what is going to be my next move? I realized that I had a few different passions. So looking at homes and, kind of browsing Zillow and Redfin, I have no idea why, but that's always just been something that I would just do. Like it was like a hobby of mine, just to kind of see what was out there. And I loved interior design. I've always just enjoyed that, and kind
I'll
of.
have to introduce my wife. She's insane about it.
Yeah,
And she's incredibly gifted at it.
Yeah.
Some people just are good at that, and
Right.
everyone else is not.
Right. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing.
It is. It's very interesting, but I can see a room and know how to put it together without everything even being in it already.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I just have, I guess, an eye for it. I'm sure your wife has exactly the same. And so, combining those two things, I was like, oh, real estate, like that sounds numbers. Real estate's huge on numbers, and I'm a huge number cruncher. And, but there was an element that was missing, and the element that was missing was the ability to help other people. And so when I started off on my journey, and, I was started in the residential space, I started to tour homes. And actually the first home that I had toured was a, how do you put it? Kind of slumlordy, not gonna lie. It was on the market. It was in the area that I was looking for.
Geographically,
yes. Right. And also, I specifically invest in distressed neighborhoods or distressed communities, I guess you could say, right, in inner Houston. I like the wards. I like the wards because there's a history and there's a culture behind it. And I like to be able to help those that feel like, they could use a little bit of an extra helping hand in a sense. Sure. So target my zip codes on where I'm going, meet my realtor at this first home. Kids are with me. They're playing in the front yard and whatnot. And I started to walk through it. And I noticed that it was a single mom, and she had 3 kiddos, 2 girls and a boy. And she shared a room with one of her kids, and then the other 2 had their own. But I noticed as I was touring like the home that there was a lot of things that were not up to par, right? So when you're in real estate, obviously, if you've got the opportunity to talk to a tenant or someone that's in the area to just find out more about the property for your due diligence and knowing what to expect, right? When you in terms of renovations and stuff.
And so was she a renter?
Yes, she was a renter.
So she didn't own the home.
Right.
She was renting the home.
She was renting a home. Yeah. So another investor had this home, and she was renting from them. $1,200 a month is what she was paying. So we're walking through, and I'm asking her, I'm like, okay, like I'm noticing that there's something wrong with the foundation, noticing that there's like something wrong with like the flooring on one side, just kind of that eye, right? Sure. And I asked her, is there anything with the property that you're like unhappy about? She's like, well, the toilet backs up when it rains and the tub bubbles. And she starts talking about like different things that you would not expect, especially when you're paying $1,200 a month in rent, right?
Yeah, that are real problems.
Right. These are real problems. Yeah. So I know, okay, this house is on pier and beam foundation. She's talking about tubs backing up and toilets bubbling. There's something wrong with the plumbing under here. And, plumbing fixed on pier and beam is a lot easier than on a home that's built on, foundation,
Sure.
because you just get under it. But that's still a very real problem. So I'm adding up numbers in my head. Okay. And then I noticed that there's like a space heater on the ground in a few different places. And I asked her, I'm like, do you guys have heat? And she's like, or I said, I didn't ask, do you have heat? I said, why do you have space heaters in, all these different rooms? And she said, because they didn't have heat. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have heat? Like, that's what? I'm like, I noticed that there's window units and stuff like that in a couple of different places, but you don't have heat. And she says, no. I'm like, well, then how do you heat your home then in, when it's cold out? And she said that they use the oven. And right then I was like, this is not okay.
So the space heaters didn't even work.
The space heaters worked, but they were like those little desk ones,
Sure, yeah.
right?
It's only going to do so much.
Exactly. Like you almost have to immediately be near that
be
to
sitting
feel
on it.
anything.
Yeah,
right.
You have to be sitting on it to have any benefit.
Exactly. And so, time kind of goes on as I'm looking at this home and I see, we go in one room and I can see like down to the grass on the baseboards are kind of pulled apart. And I'm just like, ugh, like, I don't like this. I do not like this. And when you put yourself in the shoes of other people and you really start to like empathize and kind of like put yourself in their shoes, like I've got my kids in the front yard right now playing with my realtor. The last thing I would ever want is to be in a position where like that's my kid's room, or I'm responsible for a family and these are like their living conditions.
Right.
So that's fast forward. That's how I ended up coming into the mission of wanting to help single moms and children. And I founded my company literally the next month.
So when you went into that situation to look at that home, you didn't go into it with that mission.
No.
But while you were there, you were like, oh, this is the purpose of this.
Right.
Right. You identified it in the moment. This is what I want to do.
Right. Like I already knew that I wanted to help people. And my thought in helping people was, I'm in the residential space. I'm not in commercial at this point. So I'm trying to break into kind of the residential space. We already own some property in Third Ward. And, now I'm trying to like get into like the single family home type rental space. And so in seeing that situation, that's what kind of drew me to having that sort of mission. And then, of course, it's transpired since then, branching off into commercial and having kind of another aspect to how I help people in diversifying investments and that sort of thing. But
man, that's incredible. So when you decide, okay, and you said you founded it the next
month. So I toured this house in December of 2020. And so we had purchased some land in January of 2020. Then I toured this home in December of 2020, and that's when I realized, okay, yeah, I want to actually get into real estate and, and do this, figure it out. And then in January of 2021 was when I founded Wicked Holdings.
And did you purchase that property?
I put an offer on it, and the offer was not accepted. And I actually...
How'd you feel about that?
I struggled with it a lot, actually, because I knew that their living conditions were not okay. And I find that there's a lot of residents, when they live in certain communities, like they can easily be taken advantage of, whether they know, right from wrong in terms of like tenant laws and what to actually expect, tenant and landlord laws and what to actually expect. But also like fighting for a proper home. Like if there's a problem, talk to the landlord about it or property management or whatever, and like don't like keep pushing for that, right? And I think that there's a lot of people that are taken advantage of in the situation that they either don't choose to fight, or they're afraid that if they were to be evicted or kicked out, like they don't have any place to go. So they just deal with whatever living conditions they have.
Probably the second one more than the first.
Right.
I would think that would be a much more tangible concern, right? Like if this happens, I don't own this property. I can be told to leave at any point.
Right.
Then what? Right.
Exactly. And that was one thing, when I talked to the tenant, I said, I don't own this home. I'm coming. I'm just checking it out. I am interested in potentially putting an offer in on it. I didn't want to give away like too much of who I was. Right. But I asked her, I said, if these things could be fixed, would you consider, re-signing a lease and staying. And she's like, absolutely. I don't want to leave, but I've also had a lot of these complaints and a lot of these things that, you know, the landlord hasn't fixed. And so she's like, if they don't get fixed, then of course I'll be forced to go, but I don't want to. So that's kind of how I was like, okay, you know, figuring it out in my head, if I can, you know, get this property under contract and push through, then at least I know that I can build in my budget and like fix these things so that she can stay. And then my issue of finding a tenant that pays is gone, right?
Yeah, solved.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you toured that home, did you put an offer in on it after you founded your company, or was that all pretty much simultaneous?
It was before I founded my company. So, I want to say, well, then this would have had to have been like beginning of December, I want to say.
So, there's a reason that I'm asking. So you put the offer in before you'd founded your company.
Yes.
You obviously had the idea now, hey, I'm going to start a company, right? Pretty much.
It was kind of rumbling in the back of my mind.
I'm sure on some level you felt, at least I would have felt, some sense of destiny, like I'm supposed to own this property,
right,
to help this family. And when your offer is rejected, you don't end up being able to do what you wanted to with respect to that property and that family. Mm-hmm. At any point in there were you like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to do this? No,
I just thought this
didn't work out.
Yeah, I just figured, you know what, this isn't the right one for me. And I knew like this property, like from doing, I didn't even need to have an inspection done to know that there was going to be quite a bit of money that, you know, was going to come out of pocket. And so I had to kind of switch my strategy after that, knowing that, you know, I didn't have just like a boatload of money on the sides to just buy a house and, you know, put all this money into it, right?
Buy a house for, you know, $100,000 and dump 200 in it.
Right, exactly. It wouldn't have been a profitable purchase if I had purchased it like out of desperation, just thinking like, okay, I know in my heart, like I'm just going to pay whatever full price and deal with it later. I'm still very risk averse at this point, mm-hmm. in the sense of like knowing my numbers, knowing what to expect, and protecting myself at least from that, right? But yeah, me and the seller, we went back and forth a couple of different times, and they just kept rejecting. They counter offered. It didn't make sense because I knew I'd have a foundation issue, and that's pretty expensive. So, mm-hmm. The numbers just didn't work. I ended up actually seeing it come off the market. And then when it came back on the market, there was some rehab that had been done to it. So he knew, like, you know, that the property was way overpriced. And my realtor deals with a lot of investors. And so she knew too. She's like, yeah, we'll just let it be. If he comes back, cool. If not, that's okay too. So
perfect. So you found your business January 2021. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing through the interviews that I've done how many people started their businesses during COVID.
Yeah.
Because everybody's sitting around like, I guess let's do this. Like, you know, why not? And there were a lot of opportunities actually. Mm-hmm. If you could seize them, man, it's really great.
Right.
So you found in 2021. Mm-hmm. When do you pick up your first property?
I want to say I picked up my first property July. I had a lot of properties we got under contract and then they'd fall out, or the wholesaler had an issue. Because again, at this point, I don't have, you know, a ton of money, right?
Right.
This was just a thought that kind of came very quickly, and I didn't have the time to necessarily prepare for that. But I want to say I got a property under contract shortly thereafter, because I had joined a mentorship program. So I knew, okay, if I'm going to get into the real estate space, then I need to like have the knowledge to be able to do this. And, you know, if I can partner with people, like figuring it out on paper and like the textbook knowledge before I like fully jump into it. So I spent quite a bit of money on a mentorship program, gaining a lot of knowledge, and learned about like the direct seller marketing. So some of like the very old school strategies, like driving for dollars and posting on Craigslist, like I buy homes, bandit signs, like that sort of thing.
That stuff actually works?
Yeah. So I actually ended up getting the first property, I didn't know that it even had a name, but got the first one driving for dollars in an area zip code that I had my eye on. And then an absentee owner. And then the second one, so when I ended up actually founding my company and the contract that actually went through and got accepted, was from some direct seller marketing I had posted on Craigslist, and ended up meeting up with a wholesaler and seeing some of their deals. And they brought me a deal. The numbers I knew right away. I was like, yeah, this thing's like 50 grand over. Like, there's no way. And I gave him my number, and he's like, there's no way that I'm getting it for that. Cool. All right. On to the next. So keep underwriting, keep, analyzing properties, whatever. Couple months later, he messages me and he's like, hey, actually his business partner messages me and says, hey, we actually got this property down. Are you still interested? And I was like, yeah. Like, it's in an area that I'm looking for. Like, what's the number? And when they gave me the number, it was a lot closer. It was almost exactly what I had originally offered them on that property months before that. So I go check it out, fast forward, do some negotiating, get it down a little bit more. And it was a fixer-upper property. So I was going to do the burst strategy on it. And it did.
I'm amazed those things work, because I see those signs and stuff places. I'm like, who would call that? Who would do that? I guess people do.
People, so very motivated sellers will call those sorts of, those ads and all that stuff. And people that are just tired. Like, they're just getting older, or they have a lot of properties that they're just looking to get rid of. They're fine going off market because they don't have to pay commission fees or realtors. They don't have to stage their properties. They don't even have to clean them, because we go in and they're a hot, I don't know that I can curse on here, but they're a hot
you can say whatever
mess.
You want. Yeah.
And you go in,
it's
you're like,
disaster.
Yeah, it's a disaster. And whether they're embarrassed by that, or they just straight up, like, they're tired and they're like, I don't want to deal with a realtor, that's how you get.
I could see also if maybe you inherited a property.
Yep, probate.
And you were just like, I don't have any use for this whatsoever. I just want to move it.
Right.
That makes sense to me, actually, as we're talking. All right, so you pick up your first property, and what lessons did you learn when you did that you were like, man, I had no idea. I didn't even see that coming. And all of them probably.
Yeah, I was going to say all of them. Like, and I guess I can be a little bit more specific with that. So I had already known about, like, due diligence and, making sure that you have an inspector that comes out, because this wasn't like our first home purchase, right? We've already owned multiple primary residences at this point. So I've got a little bit of my feet wet in a sense, but I've never bought a fixer-upper before. So I had never done any sort of, like, construction management. I think the most construction stuff that I had ever even done was, like, painting, right? Like, I'm not sure that I really swung many hammers or things like that. So I couldn't say that I'm super handy. Justin is. He will not admit that, but I guess now it's out. So he's very handy. So I already knew that about him. If, push come to shove, I need some help on
you
something,
had that guy.
Right? Yeah, I got that guy, right?
He looks like he'd swing a sledgehammer pretty good.
Yeah, so here we are, and I've got I had about 4 different GCs come out, bid work on the property, give me some scope of works. This was all done when the property was still under contract. So I already had all of, like, my numbers and everything before I had, like, closed, because of course that plays into your purchase price, right? And seller's concessions. So so here I am, closed, and now it's like time to get to work. So get my contractor lined up, get the subs and stuff lined up, go out there, and as we start to, like, open more walls and start to see that, wow, this property's got, like, some very severe stuff going on, things that you don't know until you open up a wall, right? So found a lot of termite damage and realized, okay, like, that's really expensive to fix. Found, as we're going through and we're opening up more walls, like, the studs aren't up to code, because this house was built in originally in 1940. There was an add-on later on that added, like, basically half of the square footage onto the home. We could tell by the electrical wiring being newer than the front part of the house and the way that the studs were located. But for much of the home, like the studs weren't in the right spot. So we had to, like, in order to bring it up to code, we had to
Right.
move those.
And that's what people I don't think realize. A lot of times you can pick up a property, but if you do anything to renovate it,
Yeah.
you got to bring it up to current standards.
Exactly.
And that can really alter the price.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And, you know, I knew too, like, okay, this house had a foundation problem on the front right side of it. You could feel it as you were walking through. But I had that built into, like, the, you know, the budget, the scope of work and all that stuff. So I'm like, I'm good. Well, no, as we lift the house, the first part that we're doing, right, is foundation. So we're good. First few days, we're fine. On the very pretty much last day where we've got, like, the piers where we need them to be, the plumbing cracks, it breaks under the house. So we're like, oh, okay. So my contractor calls me.
There's a new project.
Yeah, exactly. $6,400. Will not forget that one. So already that's like built into like my contingency's gone, right? So I was like, okay, that's not fun. And then we're just going through, and it's just like shitstorm after shitstorm. Not gonna lie, it was just like, oh my gosh, like. But again, it built up resiliency in me. It built up me just figuring it out and being able to pivot. So I know, like, my materials are going to be this cost if the GC is going out to do it. Let me go see if I can go find this for cheaper somewhere else. So I found, like, Habitat for Humanity. Like, they have showrooms. Like, they have stores around different parts of Houston. And so I found a couple of locations that had really, really good stuff that was, like, always brand new, come in from builders. So I ended up buying, like, a full pallet of, like, flush mounts that are in homes today from a builder for, at that store, $14. Found some exterior doors for like $10, brand new. Like, so I just really built up like this ability to find good deals and just get shit done. So yeah, I didn't have a truck. I have an SUV. Thankfully, it's a big one. But, you know, I'm riding around with, like, freaking, Justin must have thought I was crazy, but doors and window, like, anything that I could fit in that truck just to save a buck.
Yeah, no, that's it. You are my wife. That you guys are the same. I mean, she does a lot of she'll look at something and go, I can make that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, you can, but you can also buy that. Like, she's like, yeah, I can make that. And she enjoys doing that. So it can be from my side. I don't always respond the best to it because I'm like, because I have a truck, so I know what's about to happen is I'm going to load all of this stuff up and bring it home.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
for sure. But during that process, you know, you founded your business, your first property. At any point did you get discouraged and think, man, I'm making a mistake here? Or were you just at that point you were so far involved, you were like, doesn't matter whether I made a mistake or not, I've got to get it done?
Towards the beginning of the project, I started to get a little bit discouraged.
Okay, first of all, you're from Louisiana. They don't say project in Louisiana.
That's why I told you I'm from like two different worlds.
You also say process too, don't you?
Process, yeah.
Process. Anyway, so at the beginning of the project, you got discouraged a bit.
I did. I got discouraged a little bit. I did have a friend, actually, I had made, he was a GC he was a home builder and GC in the beginning of his life. He was retired. But I met him at one of the Habitat stores because that's where they hang out. And I had him go over to this property and kind of take a look at it for me. And I probably should have listened to a few of the things that he told me, like one, the plumbing you might have an issue with when you raise this house. And I'm like, no, I think I might be okay. Because here's the thing is that people, like, real estate can be a really interesting business. There's a lot of people that are out there that like are there to see you succeed and to be able to help you. But then there's other people that are out there too that see a good deal and they're like, oh, if they've got enough experience, they could take that out of contract and wholesale it. You know, they could go behind your back and talk to the seller and get it under contract like themselves. So there's a little bit of a level of like distrust, I guess you could say, that exists in the community. And I knew that he had some property that was in the area that had been passed down from his mom. And we got a chance to like know each other quite well. And he told me like, you know, how much he regretted selling his lots and selling it, you know, the homes and stuff, because they were worth quite a bit now, right? Even, you know, in crappy state, because this is an area that's going through a lot of change and whatnot. So I didn't know him as well at that time. So I kind of took a few of like the pieces of advice that he gave, like I took a little bit where I understood where he was coming from, but then I also took a few things with like a little bit of grain of salt, right? And that one was one that I probably should have like taken his advice on and came back, but I was already getting the property for like pretty cheap, right?
Sure.
But that was also because my rehab budget was so high on this deal. So you have to make the numbers work for your formulas. And you know, I'm trying to buy this property at 70% ARV minus repairs. So that's kind of, you know, I'm trying to work within those numbers. But yeah, there was a lot of learning lessons for sure. But I think that for me, I was already in it and there was no way of going back. So even though I had problems and, you know, different points where I was like, what the hell did I just do?
Yeah.
There's no one that's like buying me out of this, or that's there to be able to help me. I'm just gonna have to figure it out. And so that's what I did. I just kept going, and, you know, I came out of pocket any money that any extra that I could have. I had a hard money loan out on this deal because of course I did it like creatively, right? So had interest payments that I was making on this hard money loan, and I was really like racing against time to be able to convert this into a, you know, long-term lending, right? So conventional loan is what I mean by that.
Right.
But yeah, there was a lot, but there was no turning back.
So property number one, stress galore.
Yeah.
Not exactly what you expected. Some things that going right out of the gate poorly.
Yeah,
So what's going on behind the scenes? You know, one of the things that I think about when I think of I've seen people, friends of mine, start businesses,
mm-hmm.
and it can create a tremendous personal strain.
Yeah.
And the ones that cope the best have a strong support structure at home.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have been together since you're teenagers, so I would imagine your support structure is fairly strong.
Yeah.
But there was stress there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I don't know if he vocalized it, but I would imagine at times I would have thought, I hope this works. You know, like,
yeah.
hope this works out.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that kind of thing. But
mm-hmm.
But how important was it to have that sort of maybe grounding agent in your life with your husband? Was that something that was there, and you think that was critical?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like when you talk about having like good support networks and like a home environment that is stress free, or at least not as much stress as like your business, that can really like pull you through some very trying times in your business. And I am forever grateful that Justin was super, super supportive. We had taken out some money out of an old IRA that I had. We had taken money out of one of his old IRAs just to like keep going, right? And he was okay with that. And I think it's because he also knows me really well. And he knows that like I will absolutely plan the shit out of stuff. Like and that is like a downfall for me though too, because I can easily get stuck in like an analysis paralysis stage. And for him, he's one of those guys that's like, just go for it and then figure it out later. And I guess I had that mentality as a kid, right? But in my business, I didn't. I had like very much like plan. And when things weren't going according to plan, I'd beat myself up over it because that's just I wasn't okay with that. But I started to develop like that resiliency muscle and the ability to be able to pivot. And I have a lot to thank for Justin, because he kind of pulled more of that out of me. And I think if I had been at home, like stressed about the business and like, oh my gosh, I like got to figure this out. I got to sell something to like make some money to keep this project going. Like I got to do something that, and he would have not been supportive and also been hounding me. Like then that would have just been like a complete like crap show. Right.
Sure.
But he was super supportive and like, how can I help you? He'd come out on the work sites. And that's when I noticed too that like women are treated differently in the industry of real estate, especially in like the residential space. Because as soon as I brought him out, you know, this guy, big beard, tattoos, whatever, immediately the subs come off, GC comes down off his ladder, they come down, they shake his hand, they're like, nice to meet you. You think I ever got any of that? No. It was like, oh, they're like rolling their eyes, oh, here she comes. And I'm like, ah. So that's when, you know, that's when things started to kind of change a little bit too, where I should have probably brought him in a little bit sooner, even though he doesn't have anything to do with the business. It was just like, he was like my safety net, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, man, I've watched it happen both ways. That way is obviously preferable.
Yeah.
But I've seen too where the person that is founding the business can be so consumed by that that it just burns everything down around them.
Right.
And
yeah.
And that was always something that limited me wanting to start my own thing. It was like, man, the juice just is not worth that squeeze for me.
Right.
To destroy my family over that. I already make a good living. I already were able to do a lot of things now. I mean, we're incredibly blessed. Why do I want to upend it just because I have this crazy idea that might work? You know? So how many properties have you gotten since then?
So since then, actually that property made me pivot into multifamily. So I kind of looked a little bit away from the residential side. So right now we're invested in just over 400 units.
Wow.
So we have a few things in the residential side, and I've got a project that I'm kind of gearing up for on the land that we own to build a duplex this year. So talking with different builders and stuff on that. So I guess that'll increase it by, you know, one or whatever. But yeah, our main focus has been on the apartment side. So multifamily syndications, passively investing in them to diversify our portfolio. And now we're starting to look into like some triple net lease type stuff more on the commercial side.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's been a wild ride for sure.
I mean, you think about the timing too. It's a year and a half,
and
it's been probably a whirlwind.
Yeah, when I tell you that, like I went head first into this, I did, like without a doubt. I mean, I've been able to balance quite well, like, you know, the family life, and with Justin, he travels a lot for work, so it's been a lot of, like 2021 was kind of that year where, you know, I'm like up till 1, 2 in the morning, working, studying, trying to like figure out different strategies and just like, where am I going next? Right. So tons of like content creation and just trying to build up like, you know, my network and study, really like learning the industry. And 2022 was when things started to really kind of like shape form. And that's where like the bulk of those, not all 400 units, but that's where like the bulk of the multifamily syndication stuff came in. So
do you feel like that was sort of a natural progression from a learning curve perspective? Like you had to have that amount of time to really kind of figure out how to make those moves, or did it just take time to identify the right opportunities?
It took time. I'd say that it's probably both, right? Because when you get into something new, like I didn't have a real estate background, so I didn't know like too much about it, or investing in syndications. I didn't even know that was even a thing, right? Most people don't have access to those sorts of opportunities to invest in apartments because you really need to know an operator and a team, and you have to understand the industry enough to, or at least trust an operator enough to, you know, take your capital, like here you go kind of thing.
Right.
Because it's very like you give up control when you're doing that, but it's no different than if you were to invest in the stock market. Like you don't have any control over your portfolio there other than when you buy and sell. If you have an FA or financial advisor that's doing it for you, then you know that control is in their hands, not yours anymore. So a little bit, but I guess for me, the transition happened quite naturally, where I had a couple of things I'd already done in the residential space. And at the same time that I was going through this project was when I knew, okay, like I can't scale as well in the business because the market was on fire. So
Right.
it took all I had even just to keep this one property under contract, because people were driving by. I would be out on site and people would be driving by asking how much. And so it was very much like it was a freaking gong show, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I knew, okay, this is not where, you know, I want to be full time. And so I started to put my feelers out on like, what's syndication, what's multifamily, what's that look like? And then developed relationships in that space. And we ended up passively investing in our first syndication. So that was 148 units out in Mobile, Alabama. Knew the operator, liked the returns. It was a 30-year hold, which is pretty unusual for most real estate investments, but it's like more of like a perpetuity model. And so I was learning multifamily at the same time that I was working on this project. Because I'm like, okay, what's going to be my next move, right? My next move is not going to be this crap again, because this was like stress ball.
Yeah, this was ridiculous. This is not happening again.
Yeah, like, so even now, I'm still like scared about it. And I'm like, okay, if I was to buy another like fixer, the fixer is going to be, okay, I can do the floor and I can paint the wall or fix the kitchen. Like none of this.
We're going to get rid of this paneling and that's about it.
Right. Yeah. Like this, oh my gosh, I literally could talk for days on like all the stuff that we ended up having to do on this other house. But
it was the gift that kept on giving.
Yes, and it's still giving. It's still giving. I'm like,
still own the property. So
so
it's a lease property, I guess. You turned it into a lease property.
Yeah. So, you know, and it's funny. It's like all that work and stuff. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm cash flowing almost $500 on it, which is pretty unusual. This is where I say like the numbers, where I'm like big on my numbers and like buying right. But it's pretty unusual to have a property that cash flows more than $200 to $250 on a single family. Like that's pretty normal. So this one like ended up working out just really well. But again, it's like knowing your market, understanding where the rent's going to be, like understanding you're buying and, you know, how much money you're in for. I ended up having to come out of pocket more on that property after we had finished the rehab and all of that stuff, because the contractor like super shady and had a lien put out on it. When I tell you this property, like I learned.
That was your first property?
That was my first property. And I had to get lawyers involved. I had liens that popped up on my property as I was trying to refinance it. It was a disaster. But it's crazy though, because I tell people like these stories, right? Especially others like friends in real estate. And they're like, oh, I went through this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I don't feel as bad, right?
So talking to me who's not in real estate, I'm like, I would never buy another property. Like that literally would end right there. Yeah. But then I guess if you're in that world and the other ones are like, that's normal.
It's normal.
It's pretty easy. You got off easy.
Yeah. Like I won't say that I've had anyone tell me that per se, because they're like, oof, like that's like 10 years of experience in that one project. But you know, I'm even though it sucked, I'm still grateful for that experience. I was
going to say, what a blessing. I mean, if it truly is, like you say, 10 years of experience in that project, then man, go ahead and knock that out day one.
Right. But that's also kind of what put me behind on doing this new development as well, because I was like, had that kind of distrust with contractors now. Sure. And now I'm like, oh, okay, like now I'm really going to have to like vet hard. I'm going to have to make sure that, you know, who I choose for this project is going to be like the right person who understands like also my experience in the industry and kind of my I guess my risk tolerance in a sense. And yeah, I don't know. It's just you meet contractors that are out there, and like one of them, for example, on the project before, I had him come out and bid the work, and we knew we were going to add like a bathroom. We were going to do like a conversion in the back. And he tells me something about like very slyly, like, oh, I think I could get this done in like such and such amount of time. And I was like, well, that's pretty short. Like you're going to have to pull permits. He's like, oh, I don't pull those. Like that takes too long. And I was like, okay, like you're done. Like that's I can't
the reddest flag.
Exactly. Like literally like that's like a flaming red flag that's just flying all over this guy.
I don't pull permits and I need you to pay me in cash.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and it's crazy. You think it's funny, but like this really happens.
Oh, I would
and
imagine
you're just
so.
like, and if you're not like up to speed or you are a little bit like naive, I'm grateful I was a little bit naive, because walking into a property like that probably should not have been like my first project, but it was. And you deal with it, right? I made it through and it cash flows and it's gone up in value tremendously.
Sure.
So it worked out, but you just learn as you go, and you have to be able to pivot, and you have to be okay with like things not working according to plan. And I think that's just like the epitome of just business in general, being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, without a doubt. So were you able to stick to your mission of helping others with this home?
Yeah. So actually, funny enough, it's not a single mom, it's a single dad that's in this home. And he has 4 kids. So 2 of them he pulled out of foster care. I think it's a family member. I don't give up too many details, but he's got 4 kiddos. And, he hasn't been the easiest tenant at all to deal with. I have property management on it as well. And here's another thing is like most people think when you get a property and you become, an investor, or you're owning, rentals, that you can just put a property manager on it and be done with it. That's not the case at all. It is very active still, because you're still managing the property manager. And what happens if your tenant doesn't pay rent? Well, you now have to be the decision maker on like what happens next. How do you work with them? If they need some sort of assistance, like how do you help them with that? There's a lot more to it than just putting a person in the house and them paying on time for 10 years and you're good, right?
Well, it'd be best case.
Right. That's like best case scenario. And, and they agree to like market rate rent increases every year, and you're good to go.
That's a unicorn tenant.
Right. Yeah. I want one of those because I don't have one right now. But
No, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, no. But that's also like one thing that I've learned too about specific places that you're investing as well, is like your tenant base is different. So I understand that. And I know that, when you're in communities that are a little bit more distressed, or that are going through like some sort of gentrification or just changes somewhere, like you're dealing with real people, and real people come with real challenges, and you have to be able to run it as a business, but also be a little bit empathetic as well to their situation. And so that's one reason why I've been very purposeful about having property management on it, because I know my traits and I know myself, and I have a soft heart, but I also have to, like, Justin's good at this. He has a soft heart, but he's just different. Like, we're opposites in that way, but he can keep me in line and be like, no, like this person has to do this, this, and this.
Sure.
So, yeah, just learning, right?
Yeah, and he sounds very much like I would be. I'd be like, I get it.
Yeah.
Challenges, understand.
Mm-hmm.
They also signed a contract that they agreed to these things.
Right. Exactly.
And we're holding our side of it,
mm-hmm.
and so they need to.
Right.
So yeah, and I completely understand that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun though.
No, it's not.
No, because like you said, you're dealing with real people that are facing real challenges,
mm-hmm.
and you can't always fix all of those.
Right, exactly. So you have to understand too, like when you are being a helping hand, and then also when you're being taken advantage of as well. So there's a little bit of a fine line there, and and I'm learning, but this also one of the reasons why I don't choose to stay and like build this huge portfolio in the residential space, because I really just don't have that desire. It is very active, and also I would rather have, it's a business. I'd rather have economies of scale. If I can purchase a 20-unit apartment complex and have everyone under the same roof, or, a couple of roofs, one tax bill, one insurance bill, I would much prefer that than own like 20 separate properties that you're just like dealing with, and it's just a paper trail. So that's kind of one reason for also pivoting in the multifamily space is you're running it much more as a business, and it's more business to business,
That does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So as we kind of get, to the end here, how did you come up with the name Wicked Holdings?
So up north, the word wicked means like awesome, like really cool. And I wanted to, for one, I thought wicked was was awesome. That
it's a
sounds
cool
really funny,
word.
but I also wanted to embody like this I had this vision of like surrounding myself around like other really awesome people and like others that are like-minded and positive and just wicked. And so that's where I was like, you know what? I'm going to develop my company around that, and maybe it'll draw other people that have that same kind of vibe to them, to my tribe or to my community, and we build together. So that's where I came up with it.
Definitely a unique name.
Yeah.
The word wicked, when you hear that word, I always associate it with the play. The Wizard of Oz spin-off play or whatever, which is amazing. But it is a unique name. And when I read, like I said, kind of what you were doing, how you were doing it, the mission behind it, and then, looking into your background a bit and realizing, well, you didn't always do real estate. I just found it interesting that you were like, and 0 to 100 in real estate. Is that generally how you do things in life? You go from 0 to 100 on it?
Yeah, honestly, I say so because I don't like to sit in like being stagnant for too long. I'm either in it or I'm not. And so like that's how that's really how I've just done things. Like with the business, it's like, as a kid doing this, all right, boom, on to the next. So I'm very like goals oriented, and I like to have something in front of me and know like that's my target, and I just do what I can to be able to hit that target. And then if I can bring other people up along with me, like, and we all grow and stuff together, like that's awesome. And like, that's what I'm doing this for. So even though like I made that goal to be able to help single parents it ended up being single parents after having this dad in there, but single moms and, and also supporting organizations that have that same nonprofit like belief. They've built their brand and their company around that. The multifamily side gives me the opportunity to be able to help other people get invested and for them to be able to understand and be educated on, the commercial real estate space. And so coming from that oil and gas background and being told like 401ks, IRAs, like all your traditional type investment forms, I know that there's more to that. And so in being in the space that I'm in right now, like I'm able to help so many more people with diversifying their portfolios, but really getting educated on it first. And that means a lot to me. So that, again, it's kind of like that oil and gas background really just showed me a lot, and being in the corporate world showed me that there's just more to everything, so.
And it's awesome because now what you're describing is not only helping the families in these properties that you're investing in, you're helping the people who are potentially investing, and then who knows the additive benefits of those people then being able to similarly help people like you do on the real estate side. So outstanding. I think it's a fantastic mission. I love the fact that you're able to stick to that. Has there ever come a time in this process where you felt like you were losing sight of that mission?
So I started to lose sight of like the helping single moms very specifically, because it's, for one, when you're investing with a social mission, like you've got some sort of social impact behind you, you add so many more elements to your business than just simply, I'm going to buy this house, the numbers work, it's going to cash flow, boom, I'm done. There's much more like research that's involved in like where you're going and what you're doing and how you can help other people. So that's kind of been like my reason also too, where I realized, holy crap, like it's not easy to be able to stay inside of one box when you know that that there's other people out here that can also be helped too. So I started to kind of like shift from that helping that very specific niche into how can I help more people, like with creating generational wealth and being more of like a financial literacy advocate and just educating as a whole. So yeah, I'd say that I lost a little bit of that, but it wasn't necessarily losing it as much as it was like pivoting to another area where I felt like I could
almost
touch.
Broadening the mission a bit, in how you were helping people.
Right.
Rather than, singular focus on, single parent, your focus now is on how do I take each opportunity and use that opportunity to help somebody.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
That's outstanding. So, well, Nicole, thank you so much. It's been great hearing your story and getting to know you a bit more.
Okay.
And I can't wait to see where Wicked Holdings goes. And if people want to know more about Wicked Holdings, where can they find information on that?
Yeah, they can go to on LinkedIn. I'm not in trouble anymore.
I was going to say, it's fantastic to learn that you're not a robot.
Yeah, that I'm not a bot.
You just saw that when you posted that. You're like, yeah, I got put in LinkedIn jail. And like I was telling you, I was like, I didn't even know that existed, but clearly it does.
It does. I'm out.
Yeah,
but
for now.
Yeah, for now, right? We'll see how next week goes.
Right.
But yeah, no, you can find me on LinkedIn under Nicole Gauthier, and it's spelled Gauthier. Or you can go to my website at www.wicked-holdings.com. And on there's actually a free guide as well that just helps people with like their passive investing journey if they're looking to, diversify and learn a little bit more about what I do and how that looks. There's a free resource up there. And that's probably the two best places. So feel free to reach out.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for being a part of this. It's fascinating to get to know you, and I keep a watch on how you guys are doing.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the conversation and the invite to come, and yeah, I'm excited. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Best of luck.
Thank you.
All right.